what can I say? I'm a century old almost. And what can I tell you? I can tell you two things: that you have to be committed and dedicated to a cause. Now you have the cause is Sharei Tzedek. This is not good for me. I mean, can you listen to me without the microphone?
Yes.
Now, there are two pictures over here, and for a reason. Here is one picture, not because it's Ben Gurion. The person that drew this picture was a dedicated Etzelnik. Non-Jew, his name was Eric Ray. At a reunion with David Ben Gurion, and he was commissioned by the Jewish, not Federation, by the Israel Bonds, to draw Ben Gurion. If you come closer later, you will read, and he writes, mind you, an Etzelnik who came with the Altalena to fight for the state of Israel. He came from London. And he writes, to my friend Aaron Friedman, to our meeting with our commander-in-chief. Ben Gurion united the state of Israel. I'll go back and forth. You know, with my age, I bend this way, I bend this way, and I'm entitled to make some stories. Hey, how are you? Maya, right? Maya. Well, I'll tell you a little story. Sharei Tzedek and Neve Tzedek. I was born in Neve Tzedek. I have the birth certificate with me in case you like to check it out. And Sharei Tzedek means a lot to me personally, and I'll tell you why. The last days of my father's life were in Sharei Tzedek. So that's a side story. As Jason mentioned, and I appreciate you very much, Jason, that I worked with giants to create the state of Israel, the modern state of Israel. I wasn't the only one. There were many boys like me. Young, handsome. I'm an ugly man compared to the others. They were taller, stronger, but they had the same passion for the state of Israel. Now, no country in the world after World War II wanted to accept Jews who came from the ashes. And you know, one of them that survived was the mother of the late astronaut Ilan Ramon. We became very close friends. Before his mission and before the disaster, I have brought with me a letter. He says, Aaron, I'm coming to Los Angeles with my wife and my kids. So please make yourself available. And at the same time, he said, I wrote a special article dedicated to Esther in the Israeli magazine. It's strictly for the Israeli Air Force. So I have this article, I have this letter. Of course, I didn't go to meet him. I was on my way to Michigan, where the election is taking place today. And I said, my daughter's son is having bar mitzvah. I said, don't worry about this. My son is having bar mitzvah Pesach. I said, it's a deal. I'll come to you Pesach, to the bar mitzvah of your son. Of course, we came to the bar mitzvah. He wasn't there. But Esther and myself, we were there. We met other astronauts. We met the spouses of those who perished. It was a touching situation. It means, again, to a commitment, and I told him I'll be there. I came there. He wasn't there. Now I'd like to speak about Ben Gurion. What can I tell you in 30 minutes? The man was among the 100 most influential people in the 20th century. This is not my saying. I'm quoting the magazine, the Times magazine. And he was featured together with the famous, everyone recognizes him with the big blowing hair, with Einstein. So this is the reason why I have those two pictures over here. Not because it's Ben Gurion, one because he united the people of Israel. And now I'll go back to tell you about the story of Israel, the story of Ben Gurion. The man never stayed a minute without going throughout the world to inspire Jewish people, to inspire the world. I have pictures of him with Churchill, with Roosevelt, with Golda Meir, with Eleanor Roosevelt, and just to name a few, and they compare him to Gandhi and to the most influential people in the world. So what can I say, Aaron Friedman, about David Ben Gurion? What can I tell you? But he was a kind man. He was a dedicated person, a self-educated man. He studied Greek, ancient Greek, to understand the philosophy of that period. So I am a pebble in the sand to tell you about Ben Gurion. But I was fortunate enough to know him as a toddler, as a young man, and later as a grown-up. I was his shadow, that's what they called it. I was his personal bodyguard, to protect him not from the Arabs, but within. Some people will say, well, this and that. I knew Shamir. Shamir was my best friend, and Shamir was an extremist. I was Ben Gurion's personal bodyguard, but little Shamir was my best friend. Every Friday, I was a little son, a little bit taller than him. We used to meet Friday in a little delicatessen, have a schnapsel, a little bit cognac and a piece of herring, and we would discuss and shoot the breeze, as they say, in the old language. Of course, as a lifeguard, in Israel, you know, when I grew up in Israel, when I was coming up of age, as they say, I remember Israel was maybe, I knew everyone from Dan, like they used to say, to Beersheba. This was the two centers of the Jews in Israel. Now we'll go back to your favorite story, to Shaarei Tzedek. Ben Gurion was smart, and I'll tell you why. Shaarei Tzedek opened in 1902. Ben Gurion arrived in Israel in 1906. He waited for a hospital in case he'll get cold, so he'll go and he'll go over there. So, see, this is what happened. Of course, the day he arrived in Israel, he arrived in Petah Tikva. And he stayed, and then he wrote a letter to his father. I am drunk with the smell of the orange groves. It's fantastic. What a smell. Am I in good position for your camera over there? Okay. No, you took me for a year and a half, you know, and you couldn't read the rich thing. But anyway, from there he went to Rishon LeZion and immediately organized the labor force over there. In Rishon LeZion in 1907. From there he went to Zichron Yaakov. From there, well, he had to create something else. So he went to Sedra. Who knows where Sedra is? It's a little, you know, from a historic city. And he organized Ashomer. Later it became the Haganah. So, who will time me for 30 minutes? Because I can go on for days.
You want to start?
Okay. So in Sedra he organized the Haganah, and eventually it became the Haganah. Haganah means self-defense. And of course we had other leaders in Israel, but mind you, he never stayed home. In 1909, he decided, it was still the Ottoman Empire, and you needed to know Turkish. The Turkish law is a little bit complicated. Today Israel uses the Turkish law, the British law, and the Jewish law. So he decided to go to Istanbul and study Turkish law. So he says, I'm going to live over here. I like to know what they're talking about, those Turks. And of course, you know, we had the yeshivot in the old city of Jerusalem. And this where Shaarei Tzedek came. Old people, they were supported by the Baron Rothschild and by the Yishuv, by the farmers. So, and then there was a little yeshiva in Tiberias, and the little yeshiva in Hebron. And Hebron, you know, when I mentioned Hebron, I was 5 years of age, and after the catastrophe, one of you know what happened in Hebron. They slaughtered the entire Jewish community. And overnight I grew and I said, it will never happen in my lifetime. We had a few friends. Yitzhak Rabin was one of my friends. Eric Sharon was 2 years younger than me. And a few others. And we used to meet and they say, when we grow up, we'll never have it again. And it really never happened again, except one day we hope that we will live in peace in Israel. For example, I didn't bring it with me. I have a map of Israel, of that days. And it's the same map that we have today. We had Yishuvim close to the Golan Heights, Metula, Rosh Pina. And the Arabs cannot say that we took away their land. Shaarei Tzedek did a mitzvah those days. They used to take everyone into them. It's an unsectarian hospital. It's wonderful. And really, I feel good, except I wasn't born in Shaarei Tzedek. Hadassah just opened in 1924. But in my papers, it says 1923, my military papers. But I have my birth certificate with me too. It says 1924. So I couldn't go to Shaarei Tzedek to Jerusalem. Hadassah just opened. And I was among the first boys who were born to the Hadassah Hospital. So I can go and speak, since we want to speak about Ben Gurion. Ben Gurion gave the world, the Jewish world, the dignity and to be a proud person, no matter where you live. As a Jew, he gave you everything that you can go with your head up and not looking down for a dime on the floor. So this is what Ben Gurion did. As I grew older, of course, certain things that happened in my lifetime and in Ben Gurion's lifetime, there is always a dispute among people. They say that during the War of Independence in 1948, in June, a large landing craft, World War II landing craft, that Americans have used. The Jews in the world bought it, and the Bitarim or the Etzelnik bought guns to arm a World War III. 6 half-tank, half-carriers, they call them, 500 machine guns. And but Ben Gurion, I was present at the time, called in Menachem Begin, and he said to him, Menachem, you know, this is the Afugah, the first ceasefire that we have. I know that your organization and your volunteers bought ammunitions, guns, machine guns, half-tanks that we didn't have in Israel. We had only one tank that a deserter from the British Army deserted with his tank, and he gave it to us. So I remember it like now. It's close to 70 years. Oh, 65 it's going to be. So Menachem Begin gets off his seat, and he said to Ben Gurion, David, ani achshov al zeh, and walks away. So I'll think about it. Now, the boat came in, and first they came to Kfar Vitkin. Kfar Vitkin is a little settlement where the present Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, his father lives over there. I think his father is still alive. His father is maybe 100 years old, or 99. Of course, the Haganah, at that time, we had different factions. The Haganah had its command, the Etzel had their command, the Lehi had their command, a small splinter of the Steringen at their command, and there was no one central command. So Ben Gurion said, let's try to do it on our own. And he engaged with young, he was already he was a Sgan Aluf at that time. Yitzhak Rabin, he said, Yitzhak, I have a job for you. We have this boat, but I don't want to lose life. If you can convince, once we come, if you can convince them to unload the ammunition to us, you did a good job. He says, I have only one gun. It's only one cannon. So when you said to him, I don't care if you have one finger. I don't want any casualties. Well, the boat, Kvarshmayahu, at Kravitkin, the Haganah with loudspeaker says, please, they weren't far from shore, and everyone from the front of the Etzel deserted their post and came to Kravitkin to receive the ammunition. So after we spoke to them with loudspeakers, they say, you want, come and get it, and they opened fire. They opened fire with their machine guns and sped it away towards Tel Aviv. In Tel Aviv, I don't know if you remember, or most of you are young to remember, in 1939, two refugee boats, the last one as the war was already going, and the only country that didn't fall to the Germans was Greece. So one boat by the name of Parita, with 800 refugees who escaped Europe, and another boat by the name of Tiger Hill. They both, Tiger Hill beached on Frischman Street, and Parita beached with the 800 also refugees on Frischman and Mapo. And everyone came out. In World War II started in 1939. Now let me tell you again, I'm going from place to place because I have time. Ben Gurion knew that we're going to have one day a country. Ben Gurion, Chaim Weizmann, Shortok, Golda Meir, and a few others of his future cabinet, they were the Jewish Agency, met in a palace in London, and at the same time he gave an order to build an air force in the United States. So there were 5 pilots over there. One is Aaron Remes, his father was quite an astronomer, but he was part of the Mapai, and 4 others. Then I have a picture. It was it was like only in the movies you see things like this. They had a little farm, and they didn't train on jet planes. They didn't have them jet planes, and America didn't go into war. And Esther was 16 at that time. She was there. I have a picture of her in that particular place where they were trained. And look at his mind, look at his vision. In 1939, he thought a Navy we need to have, an Air Force we need to have, and later, of course, Aaron Remes was the first pilot, or the first commander of the Israeli Air Force. Also, were a few Messerschmitts that we had over there, that we brought from Czechoslovakia. I have a picture also of Esther and with one of the first pilots of Israel. Later, if you're interested, I can show it to you, but just in case you'd like to see it. So, what can I say about a man like this? It was an honor to be around him. He inspired me. And he inspired a world. Not only me, the world. And especially the Jewish people. Because of him, they can go and they can raise funds for Sharei Tzedek. They can raise money for Hadassah. They can raise money for the Federation. So I was told that I have to cover up, close up. Okay, Jennifer, thank you very much. Okay. The British in 1941 leveled the boat, the Parita and the Tiger. They leveled it with the water. In 1941, the Italians came and bombed Tel Aviv. They bombed us like crazy. And those 2 boats were above the water, so the radars were not as developed as they are developed today. So the British decided to lower them in. Now the Altalena came down on the Parita, and she couldn't go forward, and she couldn't go backward, and it was enough time to communicate with them, and Ben Gurion called in the staff. I was with him, I'm an eyewitness to it, I heard it with my own ears, and he said, it's your job, Yitzhak, I want you to go to Tel Aviv, the Altalena is stuck on the thing. Ben Gurion cried, you believe me? The man cried. The man always used to go with a little pistol underneath, a Beretta. He didn't need any bodyguards. So he says, I want you, please, he said to him, he begged him, make sure that no casualties will happen here.
You saw him cry?
I saw him cry. He's a human. He was afraid. He said it's going to be like the Sunnis and the Shiites.
He said that?
That not like any other, like Lincoln, the same thing. Lincoln went,
Did he say that?
he said those things. Yes, he did. He says, I think,
Was Rabin in the room when he cried?
oh, he spoke to him. He gave in. He was, at that time he was in Jerusalem, and the canon we had in Jerusalem. This is the only canon that Jerusalem had.
Right.
So Rabin said, Rabin said, I'll do my best. Rabin Gurion said, please, we have the Holocaust just happened, and I don't want Jew against Jew.
Right.
This what united the Jewish people.
Were you there when he made the final order?
Oh, yesterday, yes, sir, I was there.
How did it go? Was it on the phone? How did, tell me
No,
about the
no,
final
no,
order.
no. The order was, we didn't need a phone. Gurion was
Who did
away.
he give the order to?
He gave the order to Yitzhak Rabin. He says, give them 3 wounds. And at the same time, not only they were so human, we knew that Begin went on top of the Altalena with a small boat from the Yarkon River, and he came and he was on it. And unfortunately, I don't know if a lot of you know the history of Israel. There was a name, Chaim Arlozorov. Does it mean anything to you? Okay. And he was murdered in 1933 on the beach. I lived on the shanty town near Tel Aviv, over there, near the cemetery. And we heard the cry, "We killed my husband, they killed my husband." So, Ben Gurion didn't want to have this type of a encounter with them. He said, Begin, we give you a chance, get off the boat, because we are seriously blowing it up. We need the ammunition, we prefer you give us the ammunition. We have no guns, we have no tanks, we have no ammunition. And it's the first Afuga. Their answer was, you want it, come and get it. Again was their answer. And I'm telling you as an eyewitness, I don't make up stories, there's no reason to make up a story, and this what united
The command.
the people of Israel. Now, 2 people were disappointed, Ben Gurion was disappointed in Yitzhak Rabin. 24 hours later, an order was given to unite the entire army into one army, one command. And the command was given to Yigal Yadin. He took it away from the Haganah chief of staff. And what's his name? And Yitzhak Rabin said to Ben Gurion, I want to keep the Palmach as my command. And Ben Gurion punished him not to become higher in his rank. He kept him till Levi Eshkol promoted him for the chief of staff. Okay. The other one that Ben Gurion was very disappointed with was Dayan. He really groomed him to take over but he was a military man, he wasn't a politician. So he was very much disappointed in him. He disappointed him. And we know it, he wanted to be a military man, he was great.
Did Ben Gurion make the right decision in your eyes?
In my eyes, more than the right. I would make this decision. Otherwise, you know, it's enough that we have about 1,200 casualties from the War of Independence. We will have, there will be a third temple will be destroyed.
Exactly.
We're killing one another.
Now let me ask you, Aaron, you know, I've read your story. You had hundreds of rescue missions. You rescued Holocaust people who were refugees, to boats, midnight, the middle of the night. I've read so many stories about you. So I want to ask you, of all these hundreds of rescue missions that you engaged in, was there one where you really thought your life was over?
I tell you, sometimes I feel, I'm so humble. I feel that sometimes I don't deserve much credit because there were others like me. I wasn't the only one. They were really dedicated from 1945, actually from 1943, when Italy surrendered. That's when the underground of bringing refugees and those that in Italy, but we knew already that there is the Holocaust. We knew already what Hitler did.
Right, and some escaped to France, and you were able to get
And
them.
so I went to France. I've been to France. But the most important thing where I went, I was sending in a mission to Cyprus. Now, before the state of Israel, I need some water. So the British, some people think the British were bad people. But let me explain to you. Israel today is a country of, proportionately, maybe the 5th in the world. In technology, they're the first. But economically, maybe they are the 5th in the world. Now, somebody had to put the infrastructure for them. So, not myself, Ben Gurion, Moshe Dayan, Aaron Remez, Golda Meir, they all put in the infrastructure and prepared them for the 21st century. They cannot say that they did it. Now, if Ben Gurion would have been alive today, for example, he would have been horrified that the president of Israel is in prison for raping a girl. Who heard of such a thing? That the late President Weizmann, Ezra Weizmann, he's dead, but he's still looking around. The ex-prime minister, who was the mayor of Jerusalem, Olmert, is still under indictment, and they're looking to find things. See, look at the example that Ben Gurion and Alon was a famous general. That Golda Meir was prime minister. He was a deputy. Of course, he died. He was from Kibbutz Genosar. When he died, he said, "I want the rails that brought the Jews to Auschwitz, the last piece of the trail should bring to my grave in Genosar." It's a small kibbutz. To see it, it's unbelievable. The only thing that there is Migdal Alon. In the Kibbutz Genosar, there's a big tower and shows a little bit the story of his life. So, and look at Dayan. Dayan said, when I die, he said, I don't want to be up on the gun shooting and to give me honor. I want to go back to Naalal, where I was born. No, actually he was born in Kibbutz Kinneret. And his parents didn't like the kibbutz, and they decided to go and make their own collective place where they can enjoy. They don't want to have a kibbutznik type life. So we don't have people like this. Today, the Minister of Defense that we have in Israel today, he lives in a villa on the 20th floor. And it's not enough for him. He wants more. In a penthouse. So, and Ben Gurion always was an example to his people. He went to the desert and he told the people will come and will bloom the desert, will follow me. Very few went over there. So, but still, he was buried in Sede Boker. He didn't go up in Mount Herzl. So,
when you go to Israel now, when's the last time you went to Israel?
The last time, the 50th anniversary.
Okay. What's your impression of Israel besides these characters?
Well, I'm telling you the truth. When I go to Israel, I both.
Are you disappointed?
I'm in a way disappointed, but I become another person when I go to Israel. I have a telegram from Teddy Kollek. I'll show you later. In '71, the Israeli government, Minister of Education, came to Los Angeles and he says, "Aaron, are you wasting your time here?" I said, "Well, I'm not wasting any time. Ben Gurion gave me a mission and I'm going to do his mission." He says, "We want you back in there. We have East Jerusalem, we have Dimona, we have Beersheba, we have the tigers, the black tigers. You speak English, you speak Arabic. We want you to come back." Okay, so I sold everything. I had a wonderful position. I was the director of the United Synagogue Youth Department, the entire West Coast. I had 57 congregation. That was I was supervisor. You can imagine 57 rabbis to deal with. And I was there for this one rabbi you had problems, and I had 57.
Was that tougher than the War of Independence?
Oh yeah. so anyway, I came with Esther. I told her to resign from my position and everything. And I told him one thing. I have one daughter, and she's just needs to enter high school. And at that time, high school was you had to pay for high school in Israel. He said, "No problem, Aaron. You come. You have your daughter. This." So we arrived at the day that I was supposed to be in Jerusalem. Am I on time? She's like a major, sergeant major.
You know what, we actually have time for one more question. Maybe somebody in the audience has a burning question to ask of Aaron, Jeff Abrams. Does anyone want to ask a question?
I'll ask a question.
Sure, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
A friend of mine was very active with the Reform movement. And she was very upset that when Israel was founded, that Ben Gurion struck a deal with the ultra-Orthodox. What could you tell us about that decision and where you see Israel is
Okay,
today?
I'll tell
Were you there when he made that decision?
Yeah, I'll tell you. You speak of the Reform movement. Have you heard of a name by the name of Greg Alpert?
Greg Alpert?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't? Okay, let me tell you. Greg Alpert was I called them students when I was in the United States. Today he is the executive director of distance education for the Reform movement. So, have you heard of Janet Kamener?
Yeah.
Well, she was one of my students, the same thing. Have you heard of the Academy of Arts and now, Debbie Winger?
Deborah Winger.
Yeah, very famous.
Officer.
She couldn't afford to go to any convention, and every convention that we had, I used to give her a scholarship to go. So you see, I didn't make any distinction between Reform and Orthodox. To me, people are people. They can be whatever they like to be. And Ben Gurion was never against. I'll tell you a story about Ben Gurion. Every Friday night, he had in the modest house in Sderot Keren Kayemet. Today it's Sderot Ben Gurion, they call it. And he had a black house, ample. The next house next to him was Remes's house. So every Friday night he used to invite the Sephardic rabbi, the Ashkenazi rabbi, and anyone that would like to join for a session. And he wasn't in particularly kept kosher, but for them he had a small room, paper plates, and they enjoyed, and they walked to shul together. So he kept them all, together. This is why he had a coalition of the Reform, of the Orthodox, of the Ultra-Orthodox, with the exception of the Notre Carta. They are no good. They don't believe that Israel is still there. So, everything comes with times. So, but
One more.
Hi. Why today by the way, thank you so much, both of you. Why do you feel like today there's such sort of disdain and hatred towards the ultra-Orthodox and the Reform movement in Israel?
I tell you, I don't have any ill feelings toward Orthodox or Reform. To me, they're people. And I always put myself in their shoes. Whenever I come to a situation, I like to feel what they feel. So I don't feel that, today Israel is like the United States. In a way, I'm disappointed in this. This will answer your question. They have unbelievable soup kitchens in Jerusalem. Did I wake you up? Huh?
She's
Wide
awake.
awake?
Oh, good, because I thought my dog is my word. So you see, there's no sensitivity. I don't expect anyone to share their wealth, but let them be more dignified and let them share the knowledge and do those things. So this is one way that I'm a little bit disappointed in this respect.
Well, I want to thank you, Aaron.
Well, I want to thank you.
Yeah, listen, this was an absolutely incredible insight into the history of the state of Israel. I mean, it's really extraordinary Aaron, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and Esther, thank you as well. Let me hand this to you, something else to carry. Thank you so much. And David, as always, I mean, you've always been a great friend to Charles. Thank you so much. And thank you for the best forum stories I've ever heard. Thank you so much. And I got all my geography in. Thank you also to Jeffrey and to the Abrams family for letting us come into your home. It's very special, a sort of newer portion of the Shard-Zedek family. This means so much to us to be able to come and to share this evening. Thank you also to Jason Sterling for being such a dedicated member of the Shard-Zedek family and to being committed to Shard-Zedek and to the American Committee and for all the work you do. And also thank you to the Shard-Zedek staff and the team, the American Committee staff. Jennifer Weinstein, she is the glue that pulls all of these events together. For Aaron Friedman to call her a taskmaster, like that should go down in her biography. What's that? Yes, and recently married as well, just last weekend. And obviously to Paul Jesser for all providing guidance to us throughout. He actually just returned from Israel, from Shard-Zedek yesterday. This morning. So thank you. And to Aaron Frederick, we don't really know each other yet, but I look forward to getting to know you well, and thank you for coming out. Our next salon is going to be towards the end of March. We don't have the date set yet, but if anyone is interested in joining us then, let Jennifer know, or you can let me know, and I'll take down your information and make sure that we alert you to that. And if anyone, as I said, there's information close to the door on the way out about the Underground Hospital and other campaigns. If anyone has any interest in learning more about other opportunities to learn more about Shard-Zedek or to get involved, please see me or Paul or Jennifer or Erica. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. It's really a very special